the majority of people who vote as Democrats, not the status quo, not the people who run the DNC or the DCCC or those kinds of folks, but from voters themselves, that, people are not feeling it so much. Let's put up this headline from the Daily Mail. Biden's brutal poll numbers as he announces his White House bid. 70% of Americans don't want him to run, and a dwindling number of Democrats have his back. As far as I'm concerned, family and friends, this is something that people should pay attention to. Don't just ignore it. It's almost as if they just gonna ram candidates down our throats, whether it's on the Republican side or the Democratic side. But there it is. Biden's brutal poll numbers as he announces his White House bid. 70% of Americans don't want him to run, and a dwindling number of Democrats have his back. So now President Joe Biden is going into his fourth presidential run with a brutal opinion polls. And even though the majority of Americans, including Democrats, don't want him to run again, he's doing it. His right to do it, I will say that always. Recent polls gathered from NBC News show 7 in 10 voters don't want Biden to run in 2024, including 51% of Democrats. 6% say that they want a Biden versus Trump rematch in 2024. I mean, Jordan, let's just go on and rest right there. I mean, that is very, very telling. And so what I hear the status quo, both parties say, the hell with what the American people want, which is usually the way they roll anyway when we look at the types of legislation that pass or do not pass in this Congress. Certainly, it is not reflective of what the majority of the American people want, because what the majority of the American people want, no matter how they identify politically, Jordan, is a more progressive, more robust, more bold agenda. But that doesn't happen because the owner donors are in control. But this right here, Jordan, 7 in 10 voters don't want Biden to run in 2024, including 51% of Democrats, and 6% say they don't want a Biden versus Trump rematch in 2024. Your thoughts?
It seems like Democrats are putting a lot of faith in the same outcome that we had in 2020. And they assume that would be the exact same outcome in 2024 if it was a Biden and Trump rematch. I don't necessarily think that's the case. You can draw a lot of distinctions between the real economic conditions for voters. Obviously, most of COVID so far has happened under Biden, but the worst of it, the initial lockdowns, quarantine period, that was Trump, and you saw how poorly he mishandled it. Yeah, but the cascading effects from COVID, and then the economic effects and corporate profiteering, you cannot leave that part out.
That's right.
The inflation that fueled did affect people's material conditions, and you can juxtapose that with Trump giving a temporary tax break to people, but permanent one to corporations. They did see an immediate impact here and there that they feel in a negative way under Biden. You can't really assume that it would happen exactly the same as it did in 2020, on top of all of these other voter suppression attempts in swing states, all of these other culture war attacks, and again, the impacts of inflation. It doesn't seem like a perfectly analogous situation. I would warn people against just assuming it would be a repeat, back-to-back victory for Biden. And I think that really speaks to at least creating some space to consider a viable alternative. Obviously, you want Trump or DeSantis or whoever the nominee is to lose.
That's right.
But I don't feel as confident as apparently a lot of Democrats do that Biden is the vehicle for that victory.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Jordan. Can't assume anything, and this will not be exactly the same. Nothing is ever exactly the same. And there are a lot of unknowns here. Now, Biden's approval ratings have been dropping for a couple of months now, and per 538, we can see how they have been dropping in this graph. So a lot to consider here, family, frenemies, and family. Jordan and I are laying a lot out for you to consider.